The cake hit my face before I could even process what was happening. White frosting dripped down my nose. My cheeks, my expensive navy suit that I'd bought specifically for tonight. The entire banquet hall went silent for exactly 3 seconds before the laughter erupted like a dam breaking. I stood there, frozen, my hands halfway raised as if I could somehow stop what had already happened. Ethan stood in front of me, his hands still extended from the throw, and he was smiling. Not the warm smile I'd fallen for 3 years ago, but something cold and sharp, like glass catching light before it cuts you. "This is what you deserve, Carter," he said into the microphone, his voice amplified across the massive space. The penthouse venue he'd insisted on floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet that had gone completely quiet, a joke just like this entire relationship has been. My knees felt weak. I looked around desperately, searching for someone, anyone who might step in. My best friend Riley was near the bar, phone already out. Recording. My cousin Marcus had his head down, pretending to check his watch. Ethan's business partners were grinning, some nudging each other like this was dinner theater they'd paid extra for. "You thought someone like me would actually settle for you?" Ethan grabbed my collar, yanking me forward. The microphone picked up every word. "Look at yourself, Carter. You're a mid-level graphic designer who drives a 10-year-old Honda. I own 3 companies. What did you think this was? A fairy tale?" He shoved me backward. Hard. I stumbled, my dress shoes slipping on the polished marble floor, and went down. My palms hit first, then my knees. The impact sent a shock through my bones. Someone gasped, but it wasn't concern, it was the kind of gasp people make before they start filming something they know will go viral. "Ethan, baby, you're being too nice," a voice called out. I looked up through frosting-smeared vision to see Victoria Chen, Ethan's secretary, walking toward him with champagne glasses in both hands. "Should have done this weeks ago." She handed him a glass. They clinked them together, directly above where I was still on the ground. "To freedom," Ethan announced loudly, "and to never settling for mediocrity again." The guests cheered. Actually cheered. I scrambled to my feet, my vision blurring not from the cake, but from tears I couldn't hold back anymore. I turned and ran, not caring that I looked pathetic, not caring that every single person in that room was probably uploading this to social media already. I just needed to get out. The elevator. I needed the elevator. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely press the button. The doors started to slide open, so painfully slow, and I was stepping forward when suddenly a hand shot between them, forcing them to stop and retract. I looked up. Jackson Reed. Ethan's head of security stood there, 6 foot 4 inches of solid muscle packed into a black tactical suit. He had dark hair that curled slightly at the edges, a tattoo creeping up the left side of his neck that I'd never gotten a clear look at, and these intense dark green eyes that seemed to see through everything. We barely exchanged 20 words in the 8 months he'd worked for Ethan. "Get in," he said quietly. I need to leave. I know. Get in the elevator." Something in his voice made me obey. I stepped inside and he followed, his broad shoulders blocking the view of the party as the doors finally closed. The moment we were alone, he shrugged off his tactical jacket and draped it around my shoulders. It was warm and smelled like leather and something woodsy. "You don't have to." I started. "Your shirt is see-through from the frosting," Jackson said, hitting the button for the parking garage. "And you're shaking." I was. My whole body was trembling like I'd been thrown into ice water. I wrapped his jacket tighter around myself, suddenly aware of how pathetic I must look. Cake-covered. Crying. Completely destroyed. "Thank you," I whispered. Jackson didn't respond. He just stood there perfectly still, hands clasped in front of him in that military stance he always maintained. But I noticed his jaw was clenched tight enough that I could see the muscle jumping. When the elevator doors opened to the garage, I expected him to step out and let me go on my way. Instead, he placed a hand on my lower back, gentle but firm, and guided me toward the far corner where motorcycles were parked. "Wait, I have my car. You're in no condition to drive," Jackson said, pulling a helmet from his bike's storage compartment. "I'm taking you home. You don't even know where I live. 24/7 Ashford Street, apartment 3B. He said it without hesitation. "You moved there 4 months ago after Ethan convinced you to downsize because you were spending too much on rent." I stared at him. It's my job to know things. He held out the helmet. Put this on. My hands were still shaking too badly to manage the clasp. Without a word, Jackson took the helmet from me and stepped closer. He was so close I could see the exact shade of green in his eyes. Like forest moss after rain. His fingers worked the clasp under my chin, gentle and efficient. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. His hands stilled for a moment. Then he finished securing the helmet and met my eyes. "Because someone should have helped you a long time ago," he said. "And I'm done watching people get hurt when I can do something about it." He swung his leg over the motorcycle, and after a moment's hesitation I climbed on behind him. I'd never been on a motorcycle before. Ethan always said they were death traps for people with poor judgment. "Hold on," Jackson said over his shoulder. I wrapped my arms around his waist hesitantly. He was solid and warm, and the moment the engine roared to life, I instinctively tightened my grip. He didn't tell me to loosen up or give me some sarcastic comment about personal space. He just drove, steady and controlled, navigating through the city streets like he'd done this 1,000 times. The wind whipped past us, and for the first time since the cake hit my face, I felt like I could breathe. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. The humiliation was still there, burning in my chest, but out here with the wind and the speed and Jackson's solid presence in front of me, it felt like maybe I could outrun it, just for a little while. When we finally pulled up in front of my apartment building, I realized I'd been crying again. Silent tears that the wind had dried into salt tracks on my cheeks. Jackson killed the engine and helped me off the bike with the same quiet efficiency. "Thank you," I said again, handing back his helmet. "Really? I don't know what I would have." "Which window is yours?" he interrupted. "What?" "Your apartment." "Which window?" I pointed to the third floor, corner unit. The lights were off because I'd expected to be out celebrating my engagement all night. Jackson nodded once, then pulled out his phone and made a call. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it was brief and clipped. When he hung up, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Go inside, Carter," he said softly. "Lock your door. Don't answer it for anyone except me." "Except you? What does that?" But he was already back on his motorcycle, the engine starting with a low growl. I watched him disappear around the corner, confused and exhausted and still wearing his jacket because I'd forgotten to give it back. I trudged up the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment, fumbled with my keys, and finally got inside. The space felt emptier than usual, colder, like it knew what had happened to me tonight. I didn't bother turning on the lights, just walked straight to the bathroom, turned on the shower and stood under the spray fully clothed, watching pink-tinted water circle the drain as the cake finally washed away. But the humiliation stayed. I woke up to pounding on my door. Disoriented, I checked my phone. 4:47 a.m., less than 5 hours since the disaster at the penthouse. My entire body ached like I'd been in a car accident. My eyes felt swollen from crying. The pounding continued, insistent but not aggressive. Stumbling out of bed, still in yesterday's clothes because I'd passed out after the shower, I grabbed a baseball bat from my closet and crept toward the door. Through the peephole, I saw Jackson standing in the hallway with 2 large duffel bags and what looked like grocery sacks. I yanked the door open. "What are you doing here?" "Good morning to you too." He walked past me into the apartment without waiting for an invitation, setting everything down in my tiny kitchen area. "You look terrible." "Gee, thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear." I closed the door but kept hold of the bat. "Seriously, what is this?" "Breakfast, coffee, first aid supplies, and clothes that actually fit you instead of whatever designer nightmare Ethan had you wearing." Jackson started unpacking with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "Fresh bread, eggs, orange juice, real butter, not the cheap spread I usually bought." "I didn't ask you to." "Your fridge had 3 takeout containers and a bottle of ketchup," he interrupted, pulling out a frying pan from one of my cabinets like he'd memorized where everything was. "When's the last time you actually cooked a meal?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. He was right. Ethan hated when I cooked because he said I always made the apartment smell. We ate out constantly or had things catered. "That doesn't explain why you're in my apartment at 5 in the morning," I said, setting the bat down. Jackson cracked eggs into the pan with one hand, not looking at me. "I quit." "You what?" "Quit. Resigned. Told Ethan exactly where he could shove his security contract. He added butter, salt, pepper. The kitchen started to smell amazing. Did it around 1 a.m., right after I made sure he got home safely. Professional to the end. You quit your job because of what happened to me? I quit because I should have quit months ago. He finally turned to look at me, spatula in hand. Sit down, Carter. You're swaying. I was. The adrenaline from being woken up was wearing off, leaving behind exhaustion so heavy I could barely stand. I sank into one of my mismatched kitchen chairs. Another thing Ethan had criticized. Why would you do that? I asked quietly. That job paid incredibly well. Ethan bragged about it constantly. Money doesn't matter when you hate the person you're protecting. Jackson plated the eggs and set them in front of me with toast. Eat. I picked up the fork but didn't eat yet. You hated him? With every fiber of my being. He poured coffee black for himself, with cream and sugar for me without asking how I took it. He's a narcissistic sociopath who gets off on controlling people. I've worked security for celebrities, politicians, actual mafia bosses who had more decency than Ethan Jong. The way he said Ethan's full name, with such casual contempt, made something in my chest loosen slightly. Everyone else always spoke about Ethan with reverence or fear. Then why did you work for him for 8 months? Jackson sat down across from me with his own plate. Because of you. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. I was hired last March, he continued, not meeting my eyes. First day on the job, I watched you bring Ethan lunch at his office. You were so happy, smiling like he'd hung the moon. He took the food, said it was cold. It wasn't. I checked the temperature myself and threw it in the trash right in front of you. Then told you to bring something better next time. I remembered that day. I'd cried in the parking garage for 20 minutes. You apologized to him, Jackson said, his voice tight. You actually apologized for his cruelty. And I realized you had no idea what you were in. No idea who he really was. So I stayed. To protect me? To document everything. He pulled out his phone, opened a folder, and slid it across to me. Every insult. Every manipulation. Every time he flirted with Victoria in front of you and pretended you were imagining it. Every time he made you doubt your own reality. I have 8 months of evidence. Carter. Audio, video, text message, screenshots he thought were deleted. I stared at the phone, at folders meticulously organized by date. You've been building a case against him? I've been building your escape route. Jackson leaned back, watching me carefully. Ethan thinks he destroyed you last night. He thinks you'll come crawling back because you're too weak, too dependent, too broken to survive without him. He's wrong. How do you know I won't? My voice cracked. How do you know I'm not exactly what he said I am? Because I've watched you for 8 months. And I've seen who you are when you think no one's looking. Jackson's intensity made me unable to look away. You volunteer at the youth center every Thursday teaching art to at-risk kids. You pay your elderly neighbor's electric bill when she can't afford it. You designed an entire charity campaign for free because you believed in the cause. You're kind, Carter. Genuinely kind. And Ethan saw that kindness as weakness he could exploit. Tears were threatening again. I blinked them back hard. So what now? You have evidence. What are you going to do with it? That depends on you. He pulled the phone back. If you want to press charges, emotional abuse, financial manipulation, defamation, I have everything you need. If you want to expose him publicly, ruin his reputation the way he tried to ruin yours, I can make that happen. Or if you just want to disappear and start over somewhere he can't find you, I've already researched 3 cities with strong design markets and affordable rent. My head was spinning. You've thought of everything. I've had 8 months to plan. But why? I pushed my plate away, the food untouched. You don't know me. Not really. We've barely spoken. Why would you risk your career, your reputation, everything for someone you don't even know? Jackson was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to one of the duffel bags, and pulled out a small leather journal. He set it on the table in front of me. "'Cause I do know you," he said simply. Read the first page. With shaking hands, I opened the journal. The first page had a single date written at the top. March 15th last year. Below it, in neat handwriting. Today I met someone worth protecting. He doesn't know it yet. He doesn't know he deserves better than the monster he's tied himself to. But I'll make sure he finds out. even if it takes everything I have. I looked up at Jackson, completely speechless. I've kept a journal entry for every day I've known you, he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. Not because I'm obsessed or stalking you, because watching someone slowly lose themselves is painful, and I needed somewhere to put that anger and helplessness. I needed to remember why I was staying in a job I hated. You were the reason, Carter. You've always been the reason. I don't understand. You don't have to understand. Not yet. He moved toward the door. I'm going to leave for a few hours, give you space to process. But those bags stay here. The food stays here. The evidence stays here. And when I come back tonight, we're going to figure out your next move. Together, if you want me to. He was almost out the door when I found my voice. Jackson, he stopped, hand on the doorknob, looking back at me. Thank you, I whispered, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Something softened in his expression. Get some rest, Carter. Real rest. You're safe now. Then he was gone and I was alone with a journal full of entries about me. Evidence of Ethan's cruelty and the strange, terrifying feeling that maybe my life wasn't over. Maybe it was just beginning. Jackson came back at 8 p.m. with dinner, a laptop and a very specific look on his face that I was learning meant he'd discovered something important. I'd spent the day reading his journal. All of it. 8 months of entries documenting not just Ethan's abuse, but also small things about me I didn't think anyone noticed. The way I always ordered chamomile tea when I was anxious. How I hummed while I worked. The specific shade of blue I wore when I needed confidence. It was overwhelming and intimate and somehow not creepy because every entry was written with such careful respect. You read it, Jackson said, noticing the journal on my coffee table as he unpacked Thai food. All of it. And I don't know how to feel about the fact that you know I alphabetize my books by author's first name instead of last name. Like a normal person. I tried to make it light, but my voice was unsteady. Carter. He sat down next to me on the couch. Closer than he'd been before. I need you to understand something. I documented those things because I was trying to know you the only way I could. From a distance. Through observation. It wasn't romantic. It was survival. Survival, working for Ethan required me to shut down every decent instinct I had. Watching him treat you like garbage, day after day, and having to stand there professionally was killing me. So I wrote about you instead. The real you. The person he was trying to erase. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I'm not explaining this well. You're explaining it perfectly, I said softly. And it's probably the most thoughtful thing anyone's ever done for me. Which is either really sad or really beautiful. Both, Jackson said. It's both. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before he pulled out the laptop. I need to show you something. It's not pleasant. My stomach dropped. What now? Ethan posted about last night. He turned the screen toward me. It was an Instagram post with multiple photos. Me with cake on my face. Me on the ground. Me running toward the elevator. Each one carefully captioned with some variation of sometimes you have to cut loose the dead weight and know your worth and never settle. The post had 47,000 likes and counting. But that wasn't the worst part. The comments were brutal. People I'd considered friends were agreeing with Ethan, saying they'd always thought I was using him. Strangers were calling me a gold digger, a leech, worse things I couldn't bring myself to read. Someone had even found my freelance design portfolio and left 1-star reviews on every project, tanking my rating. He's trying to make sure you can't work, Jackson said quietly. Classic isolation tactic. Destroy your reputation, cut off your income, make you dependent on coming back to him. It's working. My voice sounded hollow. I have 3 client calls scheduled for Monday. They're all going to cancel after seeing this. Probably. Jackson closed the laptop. Which is why we're going to beat him at his own game. How? Everyone believes him. I look pathetic. You look human. There's a difference. He shifted to face me fully. Ethan made one critical mistake. He humiliated you publicly. Which means he gave you the moral high ground. And that mess? That's evidence of malicious intent. We can use this. Use it how? By telling your story. The real story. Not through angry rants or revenge posts, but through simple, honest truth. He pulled up a voice recording app. I want you to record everything. Every manipulation. Every gaslighting moment. Every time he made you feel small. We're going to create a timeline that shows this wasn't about you being unworthy. It was about him being abusive. And then what? Post it? That's just gonna look like I'm bitter. Then we don't post it yet. We wait. Jackson's strategic mind was clearly working. Ethan's pattern is escalation. He won't be satisfied with one public humiliation. He'll come after you again, probably with something bigger, and when he does, when he proves beyond any doubt that this is harassment, we release everything. The journal entries, the recordings, the evidence of systematic emotional abuse. We bury him. I struggled to find the right word. Calculating. I was military intelligence before private security, Jackson said. Calculating is what I do best. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since this all started. The tattoo on his neck was actually a compass rose with coordinates I couldn't quite read. He had a small scar above his left eyebrow. His hands were calloused but careful, like they'd seen violence but chosen gentleness. Why did you leave the military? I asked. Because I got tired of following orders I didn't believe in. His expression darkened. I watched good people get hurt because someone higher up decided their suffering was acceptable collateral damage. I swore when I got out that I'd never stand by and watch someone suffer again if I had the power to stop it. Is that what I am to you? A mission? No. The word came out fierce, almost angry. You're not a mission, Carter. You're a person who deserves better than what you've been given. And maybe I'm selfish for inserting myself into your life without permission. But I couldn't watch anymore. I couldn't stand on the sidelines while Ethan destroyed you. Something in his intensity made my breath catch. We were sitting very close on my small couch, and I was suddenly aware of every point where our bodies almost touched. The heat radiating from him. The way he smelled like cedar and rain. I should probably tell you to leave, I said quietly. This is all happening too fast. You quit your job, you're camping out in my apartment. You're planning some kind of strategic takedown. My ex-fiancé. It's insane. Do you want me to leave? I meant to say yes. It would have been the smart, self-protective thing to say. But when I opened my mouth, what came out was, no, I really don't. Jackson's eyes searched mine, looking for something. Then I'm staying. As long as you need me. However you need me. As what? My bodyguard? My friend? I couldn't finish the sentence. As whatever you want me to be. He stood up, creating distance that somehow felt deliberate. Right now, I'm the person making sure you eat, sleep, and don't spiral into despair. Tomorrow I'll be the person helping you rebuild your professional reputation. Next week I'll be whatever you need next week to be. And if I need you to be nothing, if I need space, then I'll give you space. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. But I'll still be watching from a distance, making sure you're safe. That doesn't stop just because you wake me to leave. That should sound creepy, I said. But somehow it doesn't. Because you know I mean it as protection, not possession. He moved toward the door. Get some sleep, Carter. Real sleep. I'll be back in the morning. Where are you going? My hotel. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. Unless you want me to stay on the couch, I've slept in worse places. I thought about the empty apartment, about the silence that would fill it once he left, about the way Ethan's face kept flashing through my mind whenever I was alone. Then I thought about how safe I'd felt last night with Jackson's jacket around my shoulders. Stay, I said before I could overthink it. Please. Jackson's expression softened in a way that made him look younger, less guarded. Okay, I'll stay. He grabbed one of the duffel bags and pulled out a sleeping bag, pillow, and what looked like actual camping gear. Within minutes, he'd set up a neat sleeping area on my couch that looked more comfortable than my actual bed. You came prepared, I observed. I'm always prepared. He checked his phone, frowned at something, then typed a quick response before setting it aside. Carter? One more thing. Yeah? Ethan's going to try to contact you. Probably tomorrow. He'll apologize, say he went too far, try to manipulate you into thinking you overreacted. Don't answer. Don't engage. Let him think he's won by pushing you away. And if I want to tell him exactly what I think of him, then write it down, scream it into a pillow. Tell me and I'll listen to every word. But don't give him the satisfaction of a response. Not yet. Jackson's jaw tightened. Trust me on this. Silence is the most powerful weapon you have right now. I nodded, even though part of me wanted nothing more than to tell Ethan exactly where he could shove his apology. Good night, Carter, Jackson said, settling into his sleeping bag with the ease of someone who'd slept in much worse conditions. Good night, Jackson. I went to my bedroom but left the door cracked open. Somehow, knowing he was just in the next room made the darkness less suffocating. The memories less sharp, and the future for the first time in days feel like something I might actually survive. I woke up to my phone vibrating on the nightstand. The screen glowed in the darkness. 3:17 a.m. 17 missed calls. All from Ethan. My hand hovered over the phone, trembling. Jackson's words echoed in my head about not responding, but curiosity and old habits pulled at me. I unlocked the screen and saw the text messages that had come through while I'd been sleeping. Carter, we need to talk. I may have been too harsh. You're embarrassing yourself by hiding. Come home. I'm willing to forgive you if you apologize publicly. Answer your phone. This is getting ridiculous. Fine. Ignore me, but you're making a huge mistake. The messages devolved from there into increasingly aggressive demands that I call him back immediately. The last one, sent just 2 minutes ago, made my blood run cold. I know where you are. I'm coming over. I bolted out of bed, rushing into the living room. Jackson was already awake, sitting up in his sleeping bag with his phone in hand, fully alert despite the hour. He's coming here, I said, voice shaking as I held out my phone. Jackson took it, read through the messages with an expression that grew darker with each line. When did these start? I don't know. I was asleep. The calls woke me up. Get dressed. Jeans, sneakers, something you can move in. His voice was calm but commanding, the military training evident. We're leaving in 5 minutes. Leaving? Where? Anywhere but here. Move, Carter. The urgency in his tone cut through my panic. I ran back to my room and threw on the first clothes I found. Dark jeans, a hoodie, my old running shoes. When I came back out, Jackson had already packed both duffel bags and was holding my laptop and sketchbook. Important documents? Passport? Anything you can't replace? He asked. My mind raced. Bathroom cabinet, blue folder. My mom's wedding ring, kitchen drawer by the sink. He retrieved everything in under a minute, moving through my apartment with precise efficiency. Then he stopped at the window, peering down at the street below. Black Mercedes, parking across the street right now. His jaw clenched. We've got maybe 90 seconds before he's at your door. My heart hammered against my ribs. The fire escape. Too obvious. He'll check it. Jackson grabbed both bags and my hand. Service stairs. End of the hall. Move quietly and quickly. We slipped out of my apartment, and I locked the door with shaking hands. Jackson guided me down the hallway away from the main elevator, through a door marked maintenance that I'd never noticed before. The stairwell was concrete and cold, dimly lit by flickering bulbs. We'd made it down 2 flights when I heard it, the echo of footsteps above us. Fast, aggressive. Carter, Ethan's voice bounced off the walls. I know you're here. Stop being childish. Jackson put a finger to his lips and pulled me against the wall, into a small alcove between floors. We stood pressed together in the shadows, his arm around my shoulders keeping me still and silent. I could feel his heartbeat steady and controlled, completely unlike my own racing pulse. Ethan's footsteps stopped 1 floor above us. You can't hide from me, I own you. Everything you have. Everything you are. I made that happen. His voice was getting closer. He was coming down the stairs. Jackson's grip tightened fractionally. His other hand moved to his belt, and I realized with a shock that he was carrying something. Not a gun, but some kind of tactical baton. He'd come prepared. Confrontation. Fine. Ethan's shout echoed. Run to whatever hole you're hiding in. But when you come crawling back, and you will, I won't be so generous. The footsteps retreated. A door slammed somewhere above us. Silent. We waited for 3 full minutes before Jackson finally moved, checking his phone. Building security cameras show him leaving. We need to go. Now. We took the service stairs all the way to the basement, coming out through a delivery entrance I didn't know existed. Jackson's motorcycle was parked in a loading zone 2 blocks away, hidden behind a dumpster. How did you know to park it here? I asked as he handed me the helmet. I scouted 3 emergency exit routes the first night I brought you home. He secured the bags. Old habits. Within minutes we were cutting through empty city streets, the cold pre-dawn air burning my lungs. I had no idea where we were going. I just held on to Jackson and tried not to think about how quickly my entire life had collapsed into this moment. Fleeing my own apartment in the middle of the night from a man I'd once planned to marry. We rode for 40 minutes, leaving the city center behind. The buildings grew shorter, the streets quieter. Finally, Jackson pulled into the parking lot of a small, nondescript motel on the outskirts of town. The neon sign flickered, Riverside Inn, vacancy. "Wait here," he said, disappearing into the office. He returned 5 minutes later with a key. Room 14, ground floor around the back. The room was basic but clean, 2 beds, a small bathroom. Thick curtains that Jackson immediately closed. I sank onto the nearest bed, adrenaline finally wearing off and leaving me exhausted. "We can't keep running." "We're not running. We're regrouping." Jackson set up his laptop on the small desk. "Ethan just made his first major mistake. He threatened you via text, then showed up at your residence at 3 in the morning. That's harassment. Stalking. We can file a police report." "And say what? My ex-fiancé came to my apartment?" "Your ex-fiancé sent 17 threatening messages, then showed up at your residence making verbal threats after you'd made it clear you wanted no contact." Jackson pulled up the screenshots he'd already taken of Ethan's messages. "This isn't about relationship drama anymore, Carter. This is about your safety." The word safety hit me harder than it should have. I'd spent 3 years with Ethan, never once feeling truly safe. Always walking on eggshells, always worried about saying the wrong thing or disappointing him. And now here was Jackson, a man I'd known for days, making me feel more protected than I'd ever felt. "What if filing a report makes him angrier?" I asked quietly. "Then he'll escalate, and we'll have legal precedent for a restraining order." Jackson's expression was serious. "I know this is scary, but you can't let fear of his reaction stop you from protecting yourself." I looked at him, this man who'd upended his entire life to help someone he barely knew. "Why are you really doing this, Jackson? And don't say it's because you couldn't stand by anymore. There has to be more." He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers stilling on the keyboard. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Because I watched my sister stay with someone like Ethan. She made excuses, isolated herself, believed him when he said she was worthless. By the time she tried to leave, it was almost too late. She survived. Barely, and I swore I'd never watch someone go through that again without fighting back." "Your sister, is she okay now?" "She's thriving. Married to someone who treats her like she's worth everything. 2 kids. Happy." He finally looked at me. "But getting there nearly killed her. And I won't let that happen to you." Something shifted in the air between us. Not romantic. Not yet. But deeper than gratitude. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition that we were both carrying wounds that shaped how we saw the world. "Thank you," I said, "for fighting when I didn't know how. You're stronger than you think, Carter." Jackson closed the laptop. "Get some rest. We'll figure out the next move when the sun's up." I lay back on the bed, still fully clothed, and watched the first gray light of dawn creep around the curtain edges. Somewhere across town, Ethan was probably raging about my disappearance. But here, in this anonymous motel room with Jackson standing guard, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and bureaucracy. Jackson had driven us there at 9 a.m., after I'd finally managed 3 hours of restless sleep. Now we sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs while Officer Patricia Mendez reviewed the evidence on Jackson's laptop. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes and an expression that said she'd seen everything twice. "This is substantial documentation," she said, scrolling through the timeline Jackson had prepared. "Text messages, witness statements, photographic evidence. You've built a solid case. Will it be enough for a restraining order?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Possibly. Judges vary on these situations." She leaned back in her chair. "The public humiliation, the threatening messages, showing up at your residence, these all establish a pattern. But I'll be honest with you, Mr. Wells. This process can be lengthy, and restraining orders are only as good as the person's willingness to obey them." "Meaning Ethan might ignore it," I said flatly. meaning some people view them as suggestions rather than legal orders. If he violates it, there are consequences. Arrest, jail time. But that doesn't help you if he shows up before we can enforce it. She looked at Jackson. You're his former employee? Former head of security? Yes, ma'am. And you quit to help Mr. Wells? I quit because my employer was engaging in behavior I couldn't ethically support. Officer Mendez's expression shifted slightly. Something like approval. That's unusual. Most security personnel maintain loyalty regardless of circumstances. Most security personnel haven't spent 8 months watching systematic emotional abuse. Jackson replied evenly. She studied him for a moment, then turned back to me. Mr. Wells, I'm going to file this report. I'm also going to recommend an emergency protective order based on the threats and the 3 a.m. incident. That'll give you immediate protection while we work on a longer-term restraining order. But you need to understand something. What? Men like Ethan Zhang, wealthy, connected, used to getting their way. They don't take rejection well. Filing this report might make things worse before they get better. Are you prepared for that possibility? I thought about Ethan's face when he threw the cake. The coldness in his eyes. The satisfaction he took in humiliating me. He's already made things as bad as they can get. Actually, he hasn't. Her bluntness was almost refreshing. Right now, he's hurt your reputation and scared you. But he hasn't physically harmed you. He hasn't destroyed your property. He hasn't gone after your family or friends. These are all escalation possibilities we need to consider. My stomach dropped. You think he'd do those things? I think people who lose control often try to regain it through increasingly aggressive means. She printed out several forms. Fill these out completely. Be specific about dates, times, witnesses. The more detail, the better. We spent the next hour going through every incident I could remember. Jackson's journal entries helped. He'd documented things I'd forgotten or convinced myself weren't important. The time Ethan had intentionally spilled wine on my portfolio presentation. The dinner where he'd flirted with the waitress while making me pay the bill. The vacation he'd canceled last minute because he decided I wasn't worth the expense. Writing it all down made it real in a way it hadn't been before. This wasn't just a bad relationship. This was a pattern of deliberate cruelty designed to break me down. You okay? Jackson asked quietly while Officer Mendez stepped away to make copies. I feel stupid. I set down the pen. How did I not see this? How did I convince myself this was normal? Because he was good at making you doubt yourself. That's what abusers do. They rewrite your reality until you can't trust your own perceptions. You sound like you've studied this. I have. After my sister. He hesitated. I wanted to understand how someone could systematically destroy another person's sense of self-worth. The psychology of it, so I'd know the signs if I ever saw it happening again. And you saw it with me. From day one. Officer Mendez returned with stamped forms. Emergency protective order is approved. Ethan Zhang cannot contact you directly or indirectly. Cannot come within 500 feet of your residence or workplace. Cannot contact your family or friends regarding you. Violation results in immediate arrest. This order is good for 15 days while we process the full restraining order. She handed me an official-looking document. Keep this with you at all times. If he violates it, call 911 immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself. Thank you, I managed. One more thing. She looked between us. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? Not your apartment. He knows that location. We're at a motel outside the city, Jackson said. That's temporary. You need something more stable. Do you have family you can stay with? I shook my head. My parents are overseas, military contractors in Germany. My only other family is a cousin who lives with his girlfriend in a studio apartment. What about friends? The question made my chest tight. Riley had posted laughing emojis on Ethan's humiliation post. Marcus had called me twice, but only to ask if I was planning to make things right with Ethan. My other friends had gone silent, clearly choosing sides. No, I said quietly. No friends I can trust right now. Officer Mendez exchanged a look with Jackson. Then I'd suggest finding more permanent accommodation. Motels are fine short-term, but you need stability, especially if this turns into a prolonged situation. We left the station with the protective order, and a sense of having accomplished something even if that something felt small and fragile. In the parking lot, Jackson stopped by his motorcycle. "I have an idea," he said. "But you might not like it." "What kind of idea?" "My apartment. It's 40 minutes outside the city. Secure building, doorman, parking garage with cameras. 2 bedrooms. Ethan doesn't know the address. I never put it in any company records." He paused. "You could stay there until things settle." "Jackson, I can't just move into your apartment." "Why not?" "You need somewhere safe." "I have space." "It makes sense. It makes sense tactically, maybe. But we barely know each other. This is all happening so fast. Would you rather go back to that motel? Or find some other temporary place where you'll be looking over your shoulder constantly?" His expression was serious. "I'm not asking you to make any decisions about us or what this means. I'm offering you a safe place to sleep while your life gets sorted out. That's all." I wanted to argue. Wanted to insist I could handle this alone. But the truth was, I was exhausted and scared, and the idea of going back to that anonymous motel room made me want to cry. "Okay," I said finally. "But I pay rent. We'll discuss terms later. Right now, let's get you somewhere you can actually rest without jumping at every sound." He was right. And maybe that was the most terrifying part, how quickly I'd started trusting his judgment over my own. Jackson's apartment wasn't what I expected. I'd imagined something sparse and military precise. All straight lines and empty surfaces. Instead, it was warm. Lived in. The living room had a worn leather couch, bookshelves crammed with everything from tactical manuals to classic literature, and photographs on the walls, landscapes mostly, a few candid shots of people who might have been family or military buddies. "Second door on the left is yours," Jackson said, setting my bags down. "Bathrooms between the bedrooms. Kitchen's fully stocked. Make yourself at home." The guest room was simple but comfortable. A queen bed with a thick navy comforter, a desk by the window, a small closet. It smelled faintly of cedar, and the late afternoon light coming through the curtains made everything feel softer than it had any right to. I sat on the bed and finally let myself process everything that had happened in the last 48 hours. The humiliation, the escape, the police report, and now this living with a man who'd been a stranger 3 days ago. A knock on the doorframe made me look up. Jackson stood there with 2 mugs. "Tea. You always drink chamomile when you're stressed." "You remember that from the journal?" I said, accepting the mug. "I remember everything about you." He said it matter-of-factly, without any romantic undertones. Just a statement of facts. "Listen, I know this situation is bizarre. You don't have to pretend you're comfortable with it. I'm not uncomfortable. That's what's bizarre." I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic. I should be terrified, living with someone I don't really know. But instead, I feel safer than I have in years. Jackson leaned against the doorframe. "That's because your nervous system recognizes the difference between someone who wants to control you and someone who wants to protect you. Your instincts are recalibrating." "Is that what happened with your sister?" "After she left?" "Eventually. It took time. A lot of therapy. She didn't trust anyone for months. Even people who genuinely cared about her." His expression grew distant. She'd flinch at sudden movements. Apologize for things that weren't her faults. Second-guess every decision. The psychological damage was worse than the physical injuries. What finally helped her? Consistency. People showing up every day, proving they weren't going to hurt her. Building new neural pathways that said she was safe. He met my eyes. "That's what I'm offering you, Carter. Consistency. Safety. For as long as you need it." Something in my chest cracked open slightly. Not love, it was too soon for that. But maybe the beginning of trust that I could lean on someone without them using my weight against me. "I need to call my parents," I said suddenly. "Tell them what happened before they see something online. Use my phone if you want privacy." I shook my head. "Stay. Please. I don't want to be alone for this conversation." My mom answered on the second ring, her voice bright despite the time difference. "Carter, how's my favorite son?" "I'm your only son, Mom." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Listen, I need to tell you something. Ethan and we're not getting married." Silence. Then, "Oh honey, what happened?" I told her the abbreviated version, the public humiliation, the threatening messages, the police report. Jackson quietly excused himself halfway through, giving me privacy despite my earlier request. and I realized he'd probably sensed I needed this conversation to be just mine. "I'm coming home," my mom said immediately. "Your father and I can be on a flight by tomorrow." "No. Mom, please. I'm safe. I'm staying with someone who's helping me. I just needed you to know in case Ethan tries to contact you." "Who are you staying with?" "His name is Jackson. He used to work for Ethan. He's been incredibly kind." "Kind how?" The mother radar was immediately activated. "Just kind, Mom. He quit his job to help me. He's giving me a place to stay until things settle down." "Carter James Wells. You're living with a man you barely know?" "I know it sounds insane, but I trust him. And right now he's the only person I do trust." My mom was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You sound different. Stronger, maybe. Or maybe just more honest than you've sounded in months." That observation hit harder than I expected. Ethan made me small. I'm just starting to realize how small. Then this Jackson person. He makes you feel big. I thought about that. About how Jackson never talked over me or dismissed my concerns. How he asked what I needed instead of telling me what I should want. How he documented my kindness in that journal like it was something valuable instead of weakness to exploit. "He makes me feel like myself," I said finally. "Like the person I was before Ethan." "Then I like him already." I could hear the smile in her voice. "But Carter? Be careful. Not of him necessarily, but of yourself. You're vulnerable right now. Make sure you're not confusing gratitude with something else." "I know the difference, Mom." "Do you? Because from here it sounds like you're falling for your knight in shining armor." Was I? I honestly didn't know. My feelings for Jackson were complicated. Gratitude, yes. But also something deeper. Admiration for his integrity. Comfort in his presence. And underneath it all, a growing awareness of him as a person, not just a protector. "I'll be careful," I promised. After we hung up, I found Jackson in the kitchen, cooking something that smelled incredible. He changed into worn jeans and a gray t-shirt, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. "Your mom okay?" he asked without turning around. "She thinks I'm falling for you." The knife he'd been using to chop vegetables stilled for just a moment. Then he resumed, perfectly controlled. "And are you?" "I don't know, maybe. Is that crazy?" "Probably." He finally turned to face me. "But I'm not exactly objective. I've been falling for you since March 15th. So if you're crazy, then I've been crazy for 8 months." The admission hung in the air between us, honest and raw and terrifying. "What do we do about that?" I asked quietly. "Nothing. Not yet." He turned back to the stove. "You need time to heal, to figure out who you are outside of Ethan's shadow. And I need to make sure I'm not taking advantage of your vulnerability." He paused. "But eventually, when you're ready, we figure it out together. And if I'm never ready, then I'll still be your friend, your roommate, whatever you need me to be." He plated the food, some kind of stir-fry that looked restaurant quality. "No pressure, Carter. I mean that." We ate dinner on his couch, watching some mindless action movie neither of us paid attention to. And for the first time since the cake hit my face, I felt something close to peace. Maybe my mom was right. Maybe I was falling. But maybe, for once, falling didn't have to mean hitting the ground.